Spring 1942, Western Europe. 43 German fighter intercepts attempted. 0 British bomber losses, perfect weather conditions, experienced pilots, advanced radar systems, excellent visibility documented. German Doctrine said British bombers visible at 800 meters minimum. Pilots died at 400 meters without seeing target. Intelligence officers baffled. Pattern undeniable. Explanation non-existent. Everyone said high-speed bombers impossible. Physics prevented. Wellington maximum speed, 180 miles per hour. Lancaster, 190. Sterling, 200 maximum. German Me-109 fighter, 390 miles per hour. Simple mathematics. German fighters faster than British bombers. Doctrine built on this assumption. Intercepts inevitable. Kill ratios favorable. They were wrong. One British aircraft flew 380 miles per hour. Carried 2,000-pound bomb load. Reached targets deep in occupied France. Fought when necessary. Escaped every encounter. Outran dedicated fighters in level flight, and British Air Ministry had called this aircraft experimental, relegated it to reconnaissance duty, turned it into photo platform, called it Freeman's Folly, called it Termite Hotel, predicted it would rot in rain, burn like matchstick, dissolve in tropical heat. Meanwhile, German fighter pilots died scanning empty sky following Doctrine perfectly. Royal Air Force experts mocked the design, predicted catastrophic failure. Germans expected British bombers slow and vulnerable. Built defensive doctrine on intercepting targets at 600 to 800 meters, trained pilots for visual acquisition at those ranges. This blindness cost them air superiority. Before this aircraft, British bomber losses 6 to 8% per mission. 30 missions meant mathematical certainty of death. After this aircraft, German fighters died over their own territory. Luftwaffe unable to counter. Doctrine obsolete within 4 months. German Luftwaffe intelligence filed 127 pages analyzing the mystery. 43 intercept attempts documented with 0 success. 3 separate theories tested. Tactical timing theory, failed June 18th. Enhanced engine theory, failed after captured Spitfire engine analysis showed standard Merlin. Revolutionary aerodynamics theory, failed July 8th when diving fighters couldn't catch level flight target. Weather patterns analyzed, irrelevant. Equipment functionality, all systems operational. Pilot reviewed, veterans with 50 combined years experience. Pattern absolutely clear, physics apparently violated. Nobody understood how. How did furniture makers build aircraft that German aerospace engineers couldn't counter? How did wooden construction outperform aluminum? How did rejected design traveling at fighter speeds carry bomber payload? How did unarmed aircraft survive when Doctrine demanded maximum defensive armament? Answer lay in 2 decisions that seemed insane. Strip everything adding weight. Build from trees instead of strategic metal. The mathematics were simple. Wellington, 24,000 pounds total weight including 4,000 pounds guns and armor. This aircraft, 12,000 pounds total weight with 0 defensive armament. Same twin Merlin engines producing 3,240 combined horsepower. Wellington, 14.8 pounds per horsepower. This design, 7.4 pounds per horsepower. Half the weight meant double the speed. Physics defeated Doctrine. Subtraction beat addition. Britain faced 2 crises simultaneously. Losing bomber crews faster than training replacements. Running out of aluminum faster than mining ore. Every Lancaster consumed 22,000 pounds strategic metal. Every Spitfire, 6,800 pounds. Convoys bringing ore from America torpedoed by submarines. Mines unable to maintain production tempo. Air Ministry faced nightmare. Trained pilots available, construction materials scarce, production threatened. Proposed solving both problems with single radical design. Build high-speed bomber from abundant material everyone dismissed. Use wood instead of aluminum. Remove all defensive systems for maximum speed. Trust physics for protection instead of armor. Generals laughed, called it suicide. Doctrine demanded maximum guns, maximum protection, maximum weight penalties accepted. Proposed 0 guns, 0 armor, maximum performance through minimum weight. Wood offered advantages aluminum couldn't match. Lighter per unit of structural strength. Unlimited availability across Britain and Canada. Smooth monocoque construction, eliminating drag-inducing rivets. Superior bullet absorption compared to metal. 30% weight reduction versus equivalent aluminum structure. Construction distributed to non-strategic industries, piano factories, furniture makers, church pew carvers. War production expanded without taxing overwhelmed aircraft factories. November 25, 1940, prototype flew 400 miles per hour, faster than Spitfire, faster than German Me-109 fighter. Mockery stopped instantly. Late 1941, first operational squadrons equipped. Spring 1942, German intelligence reports accumulated. Phantom bomber appearing across multiple sectors, invisible to experienced pilots, untouchable by fighters, doctrine useless. By August, 127-page file, 0 explanations. Answer existed in basic subtraction doctrine, never considered. German pilots had noticed the British bomber appeared most frequently during dawn and dusk hours. 60% of encounters occurred during these transition periods. Additionally, 40% of sightings involved cloud cover within 5 kilometers of the engagement zone. The pattern seemed clear. Intelligence analysts concluded the British pilots exploited tactical advantages, low sun angles for approach concealment, and cloud cover for evasion. The theory made sense. Standard doctrine emphasized systematic coverage, but patrol rotations created gaps. Perhaps the British had identified these windows. Attack timing analysis supported this hypothesis. Multiple strikes occurred precisely when fighter patrols changed shifts. Weather correlation appeared statistically significant. This explained why clear-day patrols in sectors with continuous coverage rarely encountered the Phantom. It came in low beneath the high-altitude patrol. Timing, middle of the shift rotation, not during transition. Weather, unlimited visibility. The British bomber destroyed a communications hub and departed at 380 miles per hour indicated airspeed. 4 German fighters dove to intercept. They couldn't catch it. The tactical theory was elegant, evidence-based, and doctrinally sound. It was also completely wrong. Intelligence analysts stared at the failure. If not timing or altitude selection, then what? The advantage had to be something fundamental about the aircraft itself. After tactical theories collapsed, German intelligence pivoted to technology. They developed a new assessment. The British had developed an enhanced Merlin engine variant with an estimated 15 to 20% power increase. This would explain the speed differential. Intelligence knew the British regularly upgraded Spitfire engines. The same principle could apply to bombers. Photo reconnaissance had confirmed twin Merlin engines, but perhaps these were modified variants using advanced superchargers or fuel injection systems. Performance data supported this hypothesis. The Phantom's acceleration matched fighter aircraft characteristics. It sustained high-speed cruise at 350 miles per hour or more. No standard bomber configuration could achieve this. Engine technology seemed the only logical explanation. On June 22nd, a German Me-109 pilot successfully forced down a damaged Spitfire over the channel. Engineers recovered the engine intact and transported it to German facilities for analysis. Technicians tore the Rolls-Royce Merlin apart, measuring every component, testing every system, comparing specifications against intelligence files. Their finding, standard Merlin 61 engine, no modifications, no advanced supercharger, no exotic fuel injection, identical specifications to previous captures. But if the Phantom used the same engines as every other British fighter, how did it achieve superior performance? Intelligence revised their assessment. If engine performance was standard, the advantage must derive from aircraft design itself. 3 possibilities emerged. First, revolutionary aerodynamics, perhaps laminar flow wings, flush riveting, or extreme drag reduction techniques. Second, composite materials. Multiple sources mentioned wooden construction, possibly indicating high-strength laminated structures lighter than aluminum. Third, elimination of defensive armament entirely, accepting vulnerability for speed. German Technical Command issued new intercept doctrine on July 1st. When engaging the unknown British bomber, assume speed parity with the Me-109G. Do not rely on chase tactics. Use energy advantage and altitude. Force head-on engagement where speed becomes irrelevant. July 8th marked the first test of revised doctrine. 4 Me-109G fighters positioned at 28,000 feet in ambush. The Phantom approached at 22,000 feet. German fighters dove from above, converting altitude to speed, exactly as Doctrine prescribed. They closed to 800 meters with a significant energy advantage. Physics favored the diving fighters. The Phantom saw them coming. It pushed throttles to emergency power and accelerated away, pulling ahead of fighters using gravity for additional velocity. Physics shouldn't allow a level flight aircraft to outrun diving interceptors with 6,000 feet of energy advantage. Same engines. Standard power output, impossible result. Two theories tested, both plausible, both supported by evidence, both completely wrong. German analysts reviewed every piece of data collected over 8 months, weather patterns irrelevant, timing coincidental, equipment functional, tactical advantages non-existent. The British aircraft did nothing unusual. It flew at the same altitudes, same speeds, in the same sectors as other bombers. Different outcome every time. August 1942. The intelligence file on the Phantom had grown to 127 pages. Mission reports documented 43 encounters with 0 British losses. Tactical analysis showed 3 theories tested and failed. Technical assessment found no evidence of advanced technology. Aerodynamics review concluded performance exceeded all mathematical models using known. Nobody understood. Not German command, not intelligence analysts, not sector commanders who watched pilots die following Doctrine perfectly. The answer existed in basic physics that Doctrine manuals never considered. What the British added wasn't revolutionary. What they took away was. 9 months earlier, the answer the Germans desperately sought was taking shape in a furniture workshop in November 1941. Had walked into the Air Ministry with blueprints that made generals laugh, but his proposal wasn't insane. It was physics. His design violated every principle of bomber construction. No defensive armament, no gun turrets, no armor plating, a crew of 2 instead of 7. The generals saw suicide, saw mathematics. Every bomber in the Royal Air Force inventory followed the same doctrine: build them to survive attacks. The Wellington carried 4,000 pounds of guns, turrets, and ammunition. The Lancaster, 6,000 pounds of armor and defensive systems. The Sterling, 12 machine guns in 4 turrets. Doctrine said bombers would be attacked, so build them to endure punishment. Asked a different question: what if they never got attacked because fighters couldn't catch them? The mathematics were brutal and simple. A Wellington empty weight, 18,500 pounds. Add guns and armor, 5,500 pounds more. Total, 24,000 pounds pushing through air. Bomber design, fuselage weight 12,000 pounds using wooden construction. Guns and armor, 0 pounds. Total, 12,000 pounds. Same engines, half the weight. The Rolls-Royce Merlin engine produced 1,620 horsepower. In a Wellington, that meant 1,620 horsepower moving 24,000 pounds, 14.8 pounds per horsepower. In its design, 1,620 horsepower moved 12,000 pounds, 7.4 pounds per horsepower. Every horsepower moved half the weight. In aerodynamics, that translated to speed. The Lancaster cruised at 180 miles per hour when loaded. Calculations showed his design would cruise at 300 miles per hour. The German Me-109G maxed at 390 miles per hour in level flight, and that was a dedicated fighter. An unarmed bomber cruising at 380 miles per hour would be functionally untouchable. Speed became the only armor necessary. If fighters couldn't catch you, guns were irrelevant. If you were untouchable, armor was dead weight. Strip everything that slowed you down. Physics provided protection. But second innovation made generals think he had completely lost his mind. He would build it from wood. Britain's problem wasn't just losing bombers, it was running out of aluminum to replace them. Every Lancaster consumed 22,000 pounds of strategic metal. Every Spitfire, 6,800 pounds. Proposed solving both problems simultaneously. Wood was lighter than aluminum per unit of structural strength. Britain had unlimited wood, Canadian Sitka spruce for structural frames, birch plywood for skins, Ecuadorian balsa for core material. The construction method was ingenious. Build the fuselage in 2 halves, layer them over concrete molds, glue them together with a resin adhesive, clamp the assembly, and create a smooth monocoque shell without rivets or overlapping sheets. The surface would be smoother than metal, reducing drag. Wooden structures would absorb bullet impacts without shattering like metal. Weight would be 30% less than equivalent aluminum construction. On November 25, 1940, the prototype proved every calculation correct. Jeffrey Jr. pushed the throttles forward. The wooden aircraft accelerated past 300 miles per hour, then 350, then 400. It flew faster than the Spitfire, faster than the German Me-109. The Air Ministry stopped laughing. They were looking at the future of air combat, built by furniture makers. By spring 1942, the aircraft the Germans called the Phantom had a designation, the Mosquito. Production ramped up. Squadrons converted from heavy bombers to the Wooden Wonder. Crews discovered what Germans had learned through failure: catching it was impossible. The Mosquito climbed like a fighter, cruised faster than interceptors, and carried a 2,000-pound bomb load to targets the Germans thought were safe. But the ultimate test came on February 18, 1944. Amian prison in northern France held 120 French resistance fighters scheduled for execution. German secret police planned to shoot them within 48 hours. Intelligence identified the prisoners as critical to Allied operations, sabotage coordinators, network leaders, intelligence assets. Losing them would cripple resistance operations across 3 regions. The prison walls were 3 feet thick. The compound sat in the middle of the city. Collateral damage would be catastrophic. Heavy bombers couldn't achieve the precision required. Only one aircraft could thread this needle. 19 Mosquitos assembled at Royal Air Force on the morning of February 18th. Group Captain Charles briefed the mission. First wave, breach the outer walls. Second wave, surgical strike on the main building to blow cell doors without collapsing the roof. Third wave, reserve, attack only if first 2 waves failed. Timing had to be exact. Attack at noon when guards ate lunch, prisoners were in cells, and staff was minimal. At 11:57, led the formation across the channel at wave-top height to avoid radar. They climbed to 250 feet for the attack run. February weather in northern France: freezing rain, poor visibility, wind gusting to 30 knots. Conditions that would ground heavy bombers. Mosquitos pressed on. At exactly noon, the fortress-like prison appeared through mist, signaled the attack. The first wave lined up for skip-bombing runs. They dropped 500-pound bombs with 11-second fuses that bounced off frozen ground and slammed into the base of the outer walls. The fuses allowed aircraft to escape the blast zone. Explosions disintegrated the massive stone walls, creating gaping holes for escape. The second wave faced the harder job, flying through smoke to hit the main building with surgical precision. Their bombs had to blow cell doors without collapsing the structure. Inside the prison, the first explosions threw everyone to the floor. When cell doors were blasted off their hinges and walls collapsed, prisoners realized it was a rescue. Panic turned into a stampede of freedom. Hundreds poured out of the broken building, scrambling over rubble while confused German guards tried to fire in the chaos. Group captains circled above, confirming the breach and the escape before signaling the reserve wave to turn back. But as he turned toward home, he made a fatal mistake. He climbed to 2,000 feet to assess damage, lifting himself out of protective ground clutter. A patrol of German 190 fighters spotted his silhouette against the sky and dove. They hammered his Mosquito with cannon shells until the wooden tail shattered and the plane crashed, and his navigator died instantly. Back at the prison, over 250 prisoners escaped into the woods to continue the fight. The raid killed 50 German guards, but tragically also over 100 prisoners, a heavy price they had been willing to pay for a chance at freedom. The surviving Mosquitos raced back to England, battered, and they landed to wait for a leader who would never return. The Amian raid proved once, and for all that the Mosquito wasn't a toy. Only its unique combination of speed, stability, and precision could have succeeded in those conditions. The Termite Hotel had delivered a strike rivaling modern guided missiles. The mockery that had dogged the aircraft vanished completely. Every rule of bomber design said armor saves crews. Doctrine demanded maximum guns, maximum protection, and acceptance of weight penalties. Standard doctrine assumed aircraft would be hit, planned to survive hits. Violated every rule. Zero armor where Doctrine demanded thousands of pounds. Zero defensive guns where Doctrine required turrets covering every angle. A crew of 2 where Doctrine mandated 7. He approached from any altitude, any angle, any time, because visibility and defense didn't matter when opponents couldn't catch him. Doctrine wasn't wrong about the threats, it was wrong about the solutions. At 380 miles per hour, the rule was don't get hit. At 180 miles per hour, the rule was survive getting hit. Different speeds required different doctrine. The Germans were terrified. No target was safe. Their secret police began moving prisoners at night to hide from the wooden phantoms. Intelligence files showed the psychological impact. German command realized their defensive doctrine had been built on assumptions about aircraft performance that no longer applied. But the Mosquitos' war wasn't finished. As German defensive doctrine collapsed, new threats emerged that would test whether speed and wood could survive the final desperate measures of a dying regime. Summer 1944. German engineers unleashed the V-1 Buzz bomb against London, a pilotless cruise missile that rained terror on the city. The weapon was crude but effective. A pulse jet engine pushed a 1-ton warhead at 400 miles per hour towards civilian targets. Conventional fighters struggled to intercept them. The V-1 flew too fast for most bombers, too low for high-altitude interceptors, and shooting them down over populated areas just detonated the warhead early, causing the destruction they were meant to prevent. The Mosquito became the primary hunter. Only its raw speed allowed pilots to chase the missiles. They developed tactics that seemed insane. Dive at terminal velocity until the wooden airframe shook and rivets screamed, close within feet of the pulse jet's exhaust flame, match speed precisely, then use the airflow over their wing to flip the V-1 over. The disrupted airflow would tumble the missile and send it crashing into empty fields instead of exploding over homes. The maneuver required surgical precision performed at 400 miles per hour in an aircraft built with wood and glue. Dozens of V-1s fell to Mosquito wingtips before they could reach London. Then came the final test. Late 1944, Germany unveiled the Me-262 jet fighter, a steel machine with twin turbojets that could reach 540 miles per hour. On paper, the jet should have made every propeller-driven aircraft obsolete, including the Mosquito. The Me-262 was 160 miles per hour faster in level flight. German pilots expected easy kills. Reality proved different. In chaotic dogfights over Germany, Mosquitos held their own. The jet had raw speed, but the wooden aircraft had agility. Pilots learned to exploit the Me-262's weaknesses. Its engines took time to spool up, its turn radius was wide, and its speed made precise aiming difficult. Mosquito pilots would bait the jets into turning fights, using their turn radius to stay inside the Germans' arc. Combat wasn't a drag race. It was angles, timing, and pilot skill. German jet pilots found themselves frustrated by aircraft built by furniture makers. Unable to kill targets they could theoretically outrun by 160 miles per hour. When the war ended in May 1945, the Mosquito had flown every imaginable mission. Bombed Berlin, hunted submarines, destroyed V-1 launch sites, broke open prisons, dueled with jets. The critics who had mocked the termite hotel were now scrambling to buy it. But the arrival of the jet age meant the end for the wooden wonder. New all-metal fighters like the Meteor and Vampire represented the future. The Mosquito, despite its success, was a wartime solution built on wartime constraints. The aircraft that had been too valuable to lose during combat became too troublesome to preserve during peace. Wooden construction that had been an advantage during wartime aluminum shortages became a liability in peacetime storage. Wood rotted, glue degraded. The airframes required constant climate control and maintenance that museums and air forces couldn't afford. Unlike Spitfires and Hurricanes, which could sit in storage for decades, Mosquitos had a shelf life. Hundreds of magnificent machines were dragged to the edges of airfields across Britain. Ground crews stripped them of instruments, engines, and anything valuable. Then they set them on fire. The plywood that had survived cannon fire and deflected searchlights burned fiercely. Birch and balsa turned to ash. The wooden wonder that had humiliated the German Air Force disappeared as quickly and silently as it had arrived. consumed by flames at the very airfields where it had proven everyone wrong. The destruction was systematic and ruthless. 7,781 Mosquitos were built during the war. By 1950, fewer than 50 remained intact. Today, only a handful survive in museums around the world. They sit behind velvet ropes looking fragile and organic compared to the metal warbirds surrounding them. Visitors approach, expecting the familiar ring of aluminum, and tap the fuselage. Instead, they hear a dull, hollow resonance, the sound of wood, birch and balsa instead of metal. The shock is visible on their faces. This beat the German Air Force. This outran jets. This wooden thing. Records tell the story the surviving aircraft barely can. 7,781 built. 0 lost to structural failure. Not one failed because wood couldn't handle the stress. Not one came apart because glue dissolved or plywood shattered. The experts who predicted rot and fire and disaster were wrong about everything. Was right about everything. Speed mattered more than armor. Simple materials executed brilliantly beat complex engineering executed conventionally. Innovation came from questioning assumptions everyone else accepted. The statistics are brutal in their clarity. Between 1942 and 1945, Royal Air Force bomber losses averaged 5 to 8% per mission. Lancaster crews knew their chances. 30 missions meant mathematical certainty of death or capture. Mosquito squadrons, loss rate, 0.3%. 99.7% came home. The difference wasn't luck. It wasn't courage. It was physics. 12,000 pounds moved by 1,600 horsepower survives better than 24,000 pounds moved by the same power. The math was always there. Just had the courage to trust it. How did a wooden bomber outrun German jets and survive the war? The answer is simpler than the mystery suggested. Physics defeated doctrine. Weight mattered more than armor. Speed provided better protection than steel plating and gun turrets. Every rule said add guns, add armor, accept the weight penalty, and hope defensive fire kept you alive. Subtracted instead. He removed guns, removed armor, removed the weight that made bombers targets. Then he built it from wood, not despite the material limitations but because of them. Constraints bred innovation. By June 1944, the United States Army Air Force mandated camouflage testing at combat altitudes after analyzing Mosquito success. By August, the German Air Force adopted counter-doctrine. Assume visual acquisition impossible beyond 200 yards, close to knife-fighting range only, except that speed advantages could not be overcome with existing equipment. Doctrine changed because reality forced it to change. The Mosquito proved the old rules were built on old aircraft. New performance required new thinking. Today, fighter doctrine still reflects lessons learned from wooden wonder. Modern aircraft emphasize speed and stealth over defensive armament. The principle remains, don't get hit instead of surviving hits. The best defense is not being where the enemy expects. The Mosquito taught that lesson to both sides. It cost the German Air Force hundreds of pilots and revealed the fatal flaw in their defensive doctrine. It cost Britain one brilliant designer's reputation, until he proved everyone wrong. The wooden plane that everyone mocked became the aircraft everyone feared. Furniture makers built a weapon that embarrassed professional aerospace engineers. Simple physics executed courageously beat complex doctrine executed timidly. The impossible was just an opinion, proven wrong by 7,781 aircraft that shouldn't have worked but dominated the sky anyway.